Hey guys, so today I'll be showing you guys this little extension that I wrote for Vscode. Now this only works on Vscode, and the purpose of this extension is to it's supposed to be used as a utility for the Manim animations framework for Python. And what it does is basically it combines the workflow of execution of code in Manim that's using the executable, and it combines the live preview into one workflow, just integrated into VS Code, and it runs the processes on a child process. We'll get into the details in a little bit, but now that's possible by default in Manim. You can provide the P flag that lets you preview it in your default video player, I believe. But I just feel like we can connect those two dots, the preview and the execution, to one, and especially in VS Code where that's possible. So now let's get into it. So let's go to the extensions tab, and once you search up Manim, there's this is the only extension under the namespace of Manim, so you wouldn't be confused anymore. And so now if you look at this, it's called Manim Sideview. We have a little the Manim logo with the eye. It's a side view, it's descriptive. If you scroll down, you can see this is the README. Tells you a lot of things and how to use that, so let's go through that really quickly. So what this is, it's a utility extension that provides a live preview of the rendering scene in working with the Manim framework, like I said. So there are a few things you have to do in order to use this, and well, obviously one of them is to install this. So because I already have it pre-installed, it will say uninstall. It should say install around here for you, at least if you haven't installed it. So just press that, and then once that's done, you can read the manual. So in the manual, there are certain sections that's more important than the others, and that's the rendering one. That's the first ever one you'll see. So the first thing is that it says upon opening any Python files, you'll see a icon pop up in the menu bar that looks like this. We'll keep that in mind, and the file will be executed and rendered using Manim under appropriate configurations when clicked. And we can also use the hotkey that's by default Control single quote and R. Note that it's a press and release. They call that a key. What do they call that? They call that a keystroke, I think. It's not simultaneous. You have to press this sequence first, and release, and then press this. Okay? And whenever a file is run successfully for the first time, the extension creates a dedicated job tied to the source file. You can read this. I definitely encourage reading this, but I'll demonstrate it manually. So let's imagine that we've already installed this, and let's go to our little explorer. This is a clean slate. This is a Python virtual environment I've made. I believe I've installed Manim here. Take a look. Just say Manim. There you go. If I have it installed, it will just show up. Oh yes, you have to make sure that you have Manim, because, well, obviously this wouldn't provide you the Manim executable that you get by installing Manim using the guide present in their documentation files. So you have to do the first. You cannot work with this alone. So let's see, I have Manim already installed. Now let's try out to make a new Python file called Manim. Let's not do that, because it will be problematic because of surgical imports and whatnot. Okay, before we move on to anything else, we'll have to do something first, and this is necessary, especially if you don't have Manim on path. Now what I mean by having Manim on path is that if you, let's say you don't have any Python virtual environments enabled, deactivate, I just spelled that so wrongly. And let's try Manim. Now if this works, that means your Manim is on path, and you can probably most likely leave this alone. But if you don't have that, search up Manim here, and then you'll see that there's an option to set the default path to the Manim executable. Now I have my executable installed here, deps scripts and manim.exe. What I do is I copy the absolute path to that, and I can just provide this to the preference. Save that, and yeah, that should work. Now we can continue on to other stuff. Then we'll import from Manim, import everything It's a wildcard import, and right, so we see that there's this little run a side view button up here, and when we first saw that, it says once we click this, it will render the scene and whatnot. And well, that's not the only option to run this, right? We also have the hotkey, which is I cannot control plus single code, and then R, that's the hotkey for running. And we also have the command, what's it called, open a side view. Now to run commands, you just usually how you would do it in Vscode, you press F1 and then just search up open a side view. Well, maybe that's not what it's called. Just search up side view, run a side view. Yes, okay. So this is the command that you can manually run by pressing. Let's not do that yet. Let's make a scene first. My scene, and we'll subclass this under scene. Well, if you've used Manim before, it's very important that your scene classes are derived classes of the scene class or the parent class, and you can set a function called construct. Now this isn't a Manim tutorial, so I'm not going to get in depth into this. You press self, and then let's try a little hello world, and we'll have font size of 23, color black, so why not? And then we'll play this using the create animation. Now what these are basically, it plays an animation of this text being created fragment by fragment. It's very entertaining to look at. Now, okay, this is pretty much ready. And so how do we run this? Now we'll just save that, and we can press this. Once we press this, it'll ask us which scene we'd like to render. Now this isn't the name of the file. This is supposed to be the name of the derived class of scene. And well, right, it should show us the list of scenes we have here. Now if I go ahead and make more scene classes, and if I press this, did I press that? Oh, I didn't apparently. Okay, so every class that is the derived class of scene will show up. Now this isn't using any AST tools. It's just using a simple little regex and it's just parsing it through. So if you rename the scene class to something like the scene and have a derived class, that is indeed still valid, but you'll have a problem with that because the regex doesn't understand that. So you can still provide it yourself anyways. Let's continue. Save that, and we'll go to my scene. And right, so once you choose your scene name, it starts to run. Now the rendering in Manim takes a little while. So right, it should show up here. It's, you know, the usual output that you see when you run Manim. There is a little hiccup here because right, the animations doesn't really register in the Vscode output terminal because this is different from the original terminal. It doesn't show colors and whatnot, but it is still definitely readable. You'll see the status here, you see everything. And right, so right, we're done, and we see this little we see this side view going crazy here because this is a very fast-paced video, but we don't see anything because there's a black background and the color is black, so we just change to white. Why not? And then I'm not gonna press this. I'll use the command to run this now. Run a side view. Now see, it works fine. This will update the video. You can pause it, you can play it, pause it, play it, pause it, play it, pause it, play it, pause it, play it. Then once this is done, you'll see, there we go, hello world. And it's like that. And there's a little cool thing that you can do with side view, and that's picture in picture. And if you've ever used picture in picture in Chrome or in any browser that supports it, it basically pops out this video tag, this video element, to be roaming freely anywhere in the screen. Now when you focus this on any other applications, it doesn't go away. That's a really cool thing that you can do. So what I usually do if I get annoyed by this tab over here, I just minimize that as much as I can, and I just open up a picture in picture, and that will minimize the space that's being taken inside the editor. And when I change this to gray, and this time I'll be using the hotkey, so control this, and then you'll see it says I pressed this, then I press R. There we go. It's run. Let's see. This does get updated even if it's in picture or whatever it is in. Doesn't really. It's always in sync. See, now it's gray. You can tell a little bit there's a difference than before. And let's get into configuring it with more details. Now, usually what you can do is use a manim.config file, but I'll do that in a while. Now, how do we configure a job that doesn't have a manim.config file? So what happens is that if you run a file that doesn't have a config file, it automatically makes one in the cache for you, and you can change that by pressing F1 and you search up set a configuration. Now, if you press that, it will show you that the settings that you can change for the time being, and that includes command line arguments, the video directory, the CNAME that you just said. You know, say stuff like please use the manim config file because this does not persist over reloads. That means if you reload Vscode, it just bam, gone. Apart from that, you can change the let's try to change the command line arguments to quality high, and when you change the command line arguments to quality high, make sure to change the video directory. What the video directory basically is that it's this directory, right? It's this directory, and it does not include the file. It's the directory that which the video is saved in, so you don't have to include the file. And if we look at this, and if you've used Manim before, when you render with quality high, the video directory at which the scene gets saved in is the 1080p 60 subdirectory. We'll configure that and we'll run this. And I don't know if we can tell the difference because this is utterly small. Let's change this to 63. Maybe that's too big. But anyways, oh, and a little side thing. When you run something, you'll see that this little thing just circulates or spins. What that's basically telling you is that the job is still, rendering in the background. And you might have noticed that I ran this twice. So what happens is that when you run this twice, or when you run this simultaneously or consecutively, it kills the process before, so that you don't end up rendering like 55 times if you're in rush or whatever, and it only registers the last render. So if you look at this, see this, I think this is 1080p. It should be 1080p. Oh crap, what the hell is happening? Okay, so you see this, we have the 63 size and we have that. And a little side note, these buttons do not work because of some Vscode limitations. At least I haven't figured out how to make them work. So you have to use this to repop this into this. And if you look at this, we'll actually see the source file. And you can correctly guess that the Manim Sideview isn't saving the file in cache or anything. It's just it executes the file and it finds the video file. And once it does, and once it finds it just serves you as a preview. So what you can do is you can just upload this to YouTube or whatever you're using in. It's a single workflow. You have everything else that you need: images, text, and so on and so on. You can't change these if you don't have a config file. Well, maybe you can using the command line arguments, but there's a limitation to which you can do this through the command line arguments, presumably, because that's the same limitations that's the same limitation that's imposed when you normally run this with the command line arguments, right? And then we also so that's it for in-time configurations or runtime configurations. There's another way that you can run. Files, and that's through manim.config files. Let's pause this for a while. That's manim.config files. Let's try to make that here. And then we have to set a CLI section. And in there we can change the video directory to somewhere else. Let's say we'll still be under the media directory, but let's say my videos, because why not? Then save that video player. Let's close this tab. What you have to do now is that if you run this, it's not going to register the newly made configuration file because you've run this manually as a standalone application. There's no connection to any configuration files. What you have to do is press this little thing, and that will deactivate the Manim job, so it will delete everything that it has ever known. You can also do this by searching up refresh refresh all active configurations. To do that, oh no, don't do this. That will delete every job that you have that's currently open in the workspace. So you would most likely want to do refreshes selected file configuration, if it has, of course, because we've already deactivated that. This file no longer has it. And now when we run this, it still asks us for the CNAME, but there's a little thing that it says, we found a manim.config file in the source directory. The Sideview is configured appropriately. We just need to CNAME now. So let's try to provide it ourselves, even though it has given us correctly, but let's just try that right. And then says successfully set a rendering scene and whatnot. So let's wait for a while and see it makes a subdirectory called my video. There we go, my video, that is run with the configuration with the configuration as set by the Manim.config file. And if you want to make sure that this file is actually the one that's inside this directory, you can look at the out directory here. Out, well, I would call it a out path here, and that should direct that should put you directly to this file. Copy path. They should look exactly the same, right? It's exactly the same. Anything else that we need to cover? Yeah, I think that's it. That's pretty much it for the Manim Sideview extension. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I have the source GitHub in the description down below. I have all that stuff that's related to this project. You can also find the Manim Sideview marketplace link down there, probably. Yeah, that's it. Thank you for watching.